1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3.
Okay.
3, 2, 1.
Wait.
Go. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Adrian Moody, and we're here at the Moody Jones Gallery, and we're here with the artist R.L. Washington. James Atkins is running a bit late, and we didn't want it shortly. So Ron, tell us a little bit about you and your upbringing, and where you learn your craft.
Well, thank you first of all for allowing me to be able to exchange my experiences as being an artist and a creator in this great city of Philadelphia, in which I was born and raised in North Philadelphia. And my mother had anticipated me being an artist since I was 3 years old. What I would do is look at the Sunday comics, and I would try to copy it even as a 3-year-old. Couldn't talk, but I just loved to draw. So since that time, she began to put me in a lot of art programs, which led me to go to Fine Art Magnet High School, Overbrook High School, and I was living in North Philadelphia. I would take 3 buses to Overbrook High School. We had a great art teacher there, Leslie Camazon, and he really worked us rigorously, and I learned so much about the arts. And what happened was, maybe 4 years later, I got a 4-year scholarship to go to Philadelphia College of Art. And when I went there from 1975 to 1979, I majored in illustration because I wanted to make money with my degree. When I finished college in 1979, I began to do fine art. I began to explore other avenues other than actually doing commercial art. I did luck up and got a few freelance jobs upon graduation, but it wasn't where my heart really was, because doing illustration, you pretty much are illustrating stories that are given unto you by way of interpretation through your artistic skills. So in a way, I felt like I was prostituted. So what I began to do was venture out to oil painting. And when I began to venture out in oil painting, I began to put my work in jury exhibitions, and that led me to venture off totally in fine arts. But in terms of working, I had a full-time job at the time. I was working at Fidelity Bank, and I did a lot of illustrations for their publication they put out every month. And that went well for a while. Then that got boring, because it was doing black and white illustrations. That was in the 80s, because at that time, a lot of corporations didn't have the finances to be able to print articles in full colors. I was working in black and white and acrylic. So it wasn't until I really got involved with oil painting that launched me into where I am now, doing the oil painting. And upon entering a lot of jury shows, I was surprised that I won a lot of awards. That's from the early 90s, even up until, I guess, the early 2000s. And at that time, I was a little surprised of the competition in the world in which I was competing against.
So what were you surprised of the competition? What was the competition like?
The competition was fierce, because during the 80s and 90s, everybody took pride in their artwork, and people just didn't do work just to do it. But when you sign a piece of artwork, there was a lot of pride and hard work involved. And so when I got to college my first year, I felt like I was one of the best in the class. But as I began to get older in my education, I found out in the world, there's a lot of older artists who were much more experienced than myself, more talented than I. So I had to step up my game. So I went to a lot of museums, went to art shows, began to talk to my contemporaries.
And who were the contemporaries did you talk to?
One gentleman by the name of Sidney Goodman.
Okay.
He taught at the Pennsylvania Academy of Fine Arts. And there was another lady, a friend of mine, she was an art teacher at the Phillips College of Art, named Martha Erlbacher. And I would go to her home. She lived in Elkins Park. So after school, I would go to her home, and she would give me tips on how to improve and Ron, what you should do with your oil paints, how you should handle your techniques, how you can get better, how you can get your work more exposed. And she died of cancer, God bless her heart, about 4 or 5 years ago.
When you said she told you how to get your work exposed, when did you take that to mean?
Well, but at that time, you didn't work exposed by way of slides. And so I would take slides of my work, say, Ron, take slides of your work, look up some galleries you think is interested in showing this style of work, and send it out there and see what they have to say about it. Because you have any work in the studio, nobody can see. You can't get the exposure that you need to see where you really stand in terms of your contemporaries.
So we're talking about back in the late 70s?
Late 70s.
So, and you're a black man, and did you find any success doing it that way?
Very little at the time. There was a lot of racism involved in the arts, just like it is now, but it was a lot more fierce back then. I talked to a black art director by the name of Barry Wimberly. I don't know if you knew him or not. and he had a design studio in Penn's Landing, and I was recommended to go see him. Ron took your work to him. He can hook you up. He knows the right people you can take the gallery to. So I went to him, and I was left there quite disappointed.
Why?
Because even although he was a black art director, I don't think he really exposed or give of himself and give me information that I needed in order to further my career at that time. I felt like I was kind of wounded by the things he was saying to me.
So what was he telling you? I mean, obviously it didn't stop you because, as the audience will see shortly, I will show some of RL's work that's here in the gallery space. So it frustrated you, but it didn't stop you. Is that a fair statement?
Yes, it is.
Why did you find it frustrating? Because he wasn't willing to share what he knew?
Yes, exactly.
And that's interesting.
It seemed like he thought I was too young to be to the stage that I thought that I should be. And he was trying to tell me, Ron, keep working, you can do better. And I kind of felt like, he was like wounding my ego, so to speak. I don't know if he's trying to keep me humble or what, but it didn't work.
So what did you do after?
I was a little discouraged.
And did it stop you?
No, it didn't stop me at all, because art is something that I love to do, and it's part of me. And I believe I was born for this purpose, to paint.
So we're talking back in the 70s.
Yes.
And so as you're transitioning from what he told you, what did you do after that?
Well, I had a lot more fire in my belly. So I began to enter more jury shows. I began to talk to more professional artists who had made it during that period of time, like Mo Brooker and Richard Watson, a guy named Clarence Wood at the Philadelphia Museum of Art, who took a liking to my work. And all these guys, they played an indelible role in me getting better and keeping the fire burning in my belly. So I just kept working and plugging at it. And finally, I got gallery representation. I believe it was the early 80s. There was a gentleman in Old City who had started a gallery, and he said, Ron, I'll give you a show. And from there, I just took off.
And do you recall the name of the gallery?
No, to this day, I can't remember the name of the gallery. It's so long ago. And the gallery, it was kind of strange, because the gallery situation, he not only just sold art, but he sold artifacts. He sold sculpture, he sold cards, birthday cards. So it really wasn't a gallery, quote unquote, art gallery, but he sold a lot of things, but also had to have a show. It didn't matter where it was, just starting out, I was just happy. Then from there, I got a show at the West Philadelphia Cultural Alliance. I don't know if you remember Francis Austin.
Yeah, I remember Francis.
Yeah, Francis gave me a show. I love your work too, and I'm gonna give you a show at the library. And at first I thought it was an insult, for me to have my work at the library. I said, I know I'm not, real experienced in art, but being able to show at the library. But she said, Ron, you have to crawl before you walk, so she talked to me and everything. So I did it. So I took like 30-something paintings there and hung them up. I didn't sell anything, but it was an opportunity to get the work exposed in West Philadelphia. At that time, it was at 52nd and Arch, I believe.
Okay, so you're taking these baby steps.
Oh, baby steps.
Baby steps to get to where you needed to go.
Yes.
So after that experience, you said that you went down and participated in this gallery space, and then you took off. Then took off how?
Well, then again, I met a lady by the name of Sandra Brodus, because this gallery closed. I don't know what about our galleries, but somehow we don't stay open long enough. So he was only in business for a little while, so I didn't know where to turn to. So I turned to Sandra Brodus. She had a gallery called Chosen Image.
So it's got to be on North Broad Street.
North Philadelphia, yeah, Broad. And so she said, Ron, I like your work, I'll give you a show, but I'm not gonna take all your work. Just give me 2 or 3 pieces, and I'll see whether I can sell it. So that went well for a while. Then she closed. So I was out in the cold again. I'm like, okay, no more galleries. But during that time, Adrian, I always created, always worked, because I was always disciplined enough to always keep something on the easel or something going, even if nothing showed or nothing sold. My main objective was to create, no matter what the odds were against me. And so after Sandra Brodus had closed, that she moved from Broad Street to Germantown section of Pennsylvania. So I showed there, she sold a couple of pieces. I got paid and everything. And then she closed. I said, okay, what am I gonna do now? And then wasn't long after that, I found out about Sandy Webster Art Gallery. And then I went there. And from there, I was showing with Sandy for about 12 or 15 years.
And that's we went back in the mid-90s.
In the 90s. But then also I was showing with a guy named Keith Scrivens. He had a gallery called Designers Gallery. I showed with Keith for about maybe 5 or 6 years. Then he closed. He was in Old City too.
Right.
And as a matter of fact, I saw Keith, I talked to Keith last week, as a matter of fact. I haven't talked to him in years. But he saw me on Facebook and wrote me a little note. But he gave me a good chance. I sold quite a few pieces with Keith. But Keith was jewelry. But he also sold artwork. as I got with Keith. But Sandy was the latest one. And then after Sandy closed, she called me up. She said, Ron, I have bad news for you. You're going to close the gallery. I'm getting old now. I said, oh, I'm back in the cold again. What should I do? And it wasn't maybe about maybe 3, 4, 5 years. That's when you started. You opened up. And my wife saw you open. Said, Ron, there's a gallery open on Eastern Road. Why don't you go check it out? So when I rode by, I saw you sitting in here. I said, I know age. You know. I saw something on a piece of artwork years ago. And then when you and I connected, and here I am.
We got a lot of history.
Yeah, a lot of history. That was a lot of years.
We go back.
It had to be like 92, 93.
Yeah, we go back.
The Malcolm X piece you wore.
Yeah,
Malcolm X. That's when you was in Lancaster Avenue.
Correct.
Yeah.
I'm on 38. Correct. So Ron, tell the audience about the influences. You know, you mentioned Bo Brooker, you mentioned Richard Watson. I think you mentioned who was the other person? Sidney Goodman, and
Martha
Earlbacher. So are those folks the folks that kind of influence you in your style that you have, or did you have a style that came from within yourself?
The style came from within myself. I didn't ever try to emulate another artist. I would look at another artist and I would try to glean from them how they got across whatever they was trying to convey in their artwork. But who I really was inspired by was a black artist named Charles White. Because he was the first black artist that I found out that had works in museums. Because me being 14, 15 years old, in fact, I remember the first time I went to the art museum, I was at Strawberry Mansion Junior High School. It was a junior high school back then. And my art teacher was named Janet Holden. And she always took a liking to my work. She said, Miss Washington, your son is very talented. And after school, can I take him to the art museum? My mother, she had no money to take me to the art museum. I never been to the art museum. I think I was about 15 or 16 years old. So one day after school, she took me to the art museum. And the first painting I ran into that blew me away was a Picasso. It was called Guernica. And it blew me away. It was a cubistic painting. So at that time, Ron, this is what you can do. You can do great works. And she was a very good influence on me being a youngster. So since that time, she would take me from time to time to the art museum after school. And I wanted to play with my friends, play ball and everything. My mom sort of made me go. And to this day, I don't regret it. Because it really paid off in great dividends.
So every artist has an inspiration of something within themselves that allows them to create ultimately something on the canvas. Do you have that?
Yes, indeed.
What is it?
My inspiration is people. Because I always love people. That's why a lot of my paintings reflect people in different situations in life. And I explore expressions, situations, and conditions. And I try to explore those conditions and try to have a connection with my artwork with the viewer. So when the viewer looks at my work, he can sort of identify or connect with the image I'm trying to convey. Well,
let's do this. So we can show the audience what we're speaking about. We want to kind of walk the feed audience to some of Ron's work that's presently hanging in the gallery space. So Ron, I want you to kind of, I'm gonna get out of the way, as you stand to my right. And there's 5 pieces on this wall, and you mentioned that you like people.
Yes.
You also like buildings.
Yes.
You know, and the images for me, I'm from North Philly, born and raised in North Philly, and some of the buildings remind me of certain streets I remember as a kid, and I still remember today. And so talk to the audience about the images and the impressions and your inspiration in these pieces that's hanging on the wall.
Majority of the works, it's strange that you mentioned that, because I also was born in North Philly, as I mentioned earlier, and had a lot of experiences that I had being in the neighborhood, being in the urban community, and a lot of things that I grew up with back in the 70s and the 80s and the 60s. A lot of it is starting to come out in my later years of life. For example, in this piece, it's called Corner Boys. The place is not really a real place, it's a place that's imagined.
You sure? I thought that was 52nd Market.
But it could be any urban neighborhood.
Because up here you got the, is that the subway?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, but
not
it could
subway,
be.
but elevated train.
Yes, yes.
Okay, it could be.
And you see the brothers on the corner gathering together. That's a very familiar sight in urban neighborhoods. But then you have a Muslim woman. She's walking from going home, and you don't know what's going on in their mind. So in a way, the work is kind of ambiguous. And in fact, all my pieces is a little ambiguity in the work, because I'm kind of giving a message that although life is peaceful, you never know when the storm is going to come to uproot your situation. So although it's a peaceful situation, we don't know whether there's going to be conflict, when she actually get to the corner, we don't know what's on her mind, we don't know what she's carrying, she's all alone, she's sort of vulnerable. So a lot of these memories in my work, sort of things that I experienced as a youth in North Philadelphia, because I don't know whether people realize it or not, but it was a lot of gang war going on in the 70s and the 80s, and it wasn't really safe to walk the streets. So that's why I purposely did a woman that was single, a Muslim woman by herself, you know, walking home from somewhere she had just came from.
And what about the piece underneath?
And the piece underneath is like another sort of emblematic of my urban experiences being a youth, you know, being in North Philadelphia with the row homes, and then usually there's not too many street lights, you know, at night in North Philadelphia at that time. And so I had like a gentleman coming home from work. This is called Up Late at Night. And a gentleman walking his dog, and then another stray dog just laying in the street, and another gentleman trying to keep the neighborhood clean. So I kind of like this piece, but then we have an ominous figure here. She don't know what he's thinking. So, and all my pieces, like I said, is a lot of ambiguity. You know, in other words, you don't know exactly what's going to transpire. You know whether he's thinking about robbing somebody or whether he's going home from his job. And so I leave the viewer to use their own imagination and figure out the storyline. But there's a narrative in it. But it's very subtle. I don't just outright come out, have like the gentleman with his gun in his hand, you know, but he got a hoodie on. And the hoodie sometimes can be a symbol that'll scare a lot of people away.
So let's walk towards the piece, to that piece's left.
This piece here is called, I believe, The Court Between the Lines. And here is the typical narrative painting based on any situation that you can see in the city at any time during the day. When you have a gentleman, you have people riding bikes, you have guys on skateboards, you have people coming home from work or going to their several destinations. Then you have a Caucasian lady, you know, with a crutch stick. And that's one thing I wanted to add in my work also. I didn't want to make it strictly Afro-American in terms of how it's presented, but I wanted to add other nationalities in a subtle way, because we all have to live in this world together. And what better way to connect us than by our artwork? And so I put her there. She's emblematic of the old senior citizen, and then you have the youth on the skateboard, and you have the older gentleman in the foreground, and then you have traffic and the busyness of life is being explored, but yet it's done in a beautiful way. And so the lines is symbolic of a division between people, cultures, age, and character.
Well, now I want you to step back a bit, because in the gallery there's a bunch of, I'm gonna call them your church pieces.
Yes.
Let's walk over to these two. I like these two specifically.
Mm-hmm.
So people don't know this, but Brian is preachers. Come on, Brian, talk to him now. He's a preacher now. Tell him this guy's multi-talented. He does preach. He delivers sermons on a weekly basis. So he's been inspired, and he has transitioned some of his works of church experiences on the canvas. And speak to that piece.
Yes. Well, most of these church pieces are very personal to me. Being a minister and a child of God, I was introduced to the Lord Jesus Christ in 1977. My second year in college, I was on the verge of flunking out. I was partying and doing a lot of things I shouldn't have been doing, as I was on the verge of losing my scholarship. So one Sunday afternoon, my neighbor, who was a pastor at that time, invited me to go to church service with her. And when I went to the service with her, my whole life had changed since that day. And I really dedicated my life to Christ. And since that time, I've been faithfully working in my church, which is the Rosie Sharon Church at 12th and Lehigh, under Bishop Leonard Bedell Sr. And I was a deacon under a former pastor who passed away some years ago. I was matriculated into a brother, to a deacon for about 5 or 6 years. And from deaconship, God called me into the ministry in 1995. And I was ordained in 1996 as an ordained minister. I do funerals and weddings and preaching engagements. And so what I try to do is every now and then, God move on me to do spiritual images. And so this is what these reflect, things that I've experienced, things that I go through even now, even in the midst of the COVID. You know, this picture here is called Preacher Man. And all the spiritual implications here, when you have the preacher here is giving the word, how sometimes it's very dramatic on how the black preacher preaches. And then you have his wife in the pulpit cheering them on and saying amen. And then you have the design elements of the painting to give you sort of a spiritual, enlightenment or spiritual connection. Let people know that God does live. And church is a beautiful experience all by itself. And so when you can put it on canvas and make it come alive to people, that's a whole nother dimension that artists can get to enrich the people. This piece I really like too.
This piece here?
This piece was done right, I think, before the COVID. It was called Casting Your Care. Because during the COVID-19, there were so many people despondent, so many people were depressed, many people felt like I can't go into the building no longer. People were losing their homes and their jobs.
So is this woman, is that representative of what you just said?
Yes, it is. Yeah, that's representative of her. But then the man, who's the pillar, the man is symbolic of being the head of the house. He's in the background, but he's the stronger one, the bolder one. But yet he's like putting his mind on God and praying and asking God to deliver them and bring hope back alive again.
Well,
This piece is about hope.
Oh, okay. He looked like he was somewhat depressed.
Well, a lot of times when you pray, Adrian, a lot of times they may not you have a happy smile on your face. Because it's like a meditation. It's like a connection you make with you and God. So therefore, at that time, you really come out of yourself and have a spiritual, touch to God by way of prayer.
And there's one other piece that I want to show the audience. Walk towards the front. Because I really like this piece.
Okay.
The woman praying.
Oh, yes.
And tell us about this.
This particular piece is called All Night Prayer. This is something that we have in our church every now and then. We have an auxiliary of a prayer band. It will call All Night Prayer, which means that the people of God will come to the church at a certain hour. Like, for an example, we will come maybe on a Friday at 10 o'clock, and we wouldn't leave until next Saturday at 6 o'clock in the morning. And we would just pray to God. Like, whatever our petitions might be, everybody would get on their knees and just raise their hands, and everybody just pour their soul out unto God to ask Him to answer prayers concerning their drug-addicted family members, divorced marriages, broken homes, dysfunction in the school system, whatever the problems of life may have been, you just pour your heart out. And so these two women, and women are known to be like the pillars of the church for some reason, because women are more diligent, more faithful than the brothers. And most churches, especially black churches in the urban community, most churches are dominated by the women. And even in the household, the black woman is the strongest being in that home. In most households, especially black households, very few homes that are led by strong men. Women are really carrying out societies. That's why I use women as being like the dominating fact when it comes to all-night prayer, because most times the women will be there when the men don't even come, or if the men do come, they'll be late, or they might doze off and go to sleep. But a real woman, a real strong black woman, I got two of them here. One is an older one with a chamois on her head, the other one got braids, showing you the difference in the generations. You have a younger one, then you have a more nostalgic, traditional dressed woman down on her knees, the old time way, was the younger one that's standing up, praying. But either way you do it, it's not about the position, but it's about the intent or the communication you have with you and God. So I want to show the disparity between the older saint and the younger saint. The older saint have her head covered, longer dress. The younger one got maybe a shorter dress, more stylish. It's on an upright, where the older one is more of an angle, bent down totally to God.
So Ron, as we kind of go back to our respective chairs, you've been at this art thing for what, 40 years?
At least. Don't remind me.
And have you seen the pros and the cons, and when we respond to that question, let's talk about the cons first before you talk about the pros.
Well, the cons is, it seems like first of all, when we call each other black artists, or when the black capitalism begin to give us the title of black artists, media is like a denunciation of our skills. How come we just can't be called artists instead of black artists? So when you use black artists, people sort of pigeonhole you and think that everything that you do is going to be negative, or it's going to be black-based, and it won't be nothing for the universe to be able to appreciate. And this is why when you go to a lot of museums, we don't see our representation like we should. And this is one of the cons of art. So what we got to do, we kind of got to play the political game in order, praise God, to make it mainstream. And over the last 40, 50 years, the fight of trying to get into the mainstream is very difficult. but yet still, like I said, well, me personally, I do the work because I love to do it, and then I believe that the God that I serve, that if it's His will for me to make it to mainstream, I will. But if I don't, I believe that God gave me this gift, and I'm going to utilize it until the day I die.
So those are the cons. So what about the pros?
Pros are situations like this, where you have, you can have your work, opportunity to show your work in any venue, and have people come and appreciate your talent, appreciate your skill, and begin to ask questions about the work, reconnect with something they have seen, something that will cause their lives to become more refreshing. These kind of things, like meeting new people and art openings, and being able to see what other artists are doing. These things are the pros to me. These things that kind of give me more of a push to want to do more and do better than what I have been doing.
Well, I will say that since we've been open, we've hosted you two or three times here at the gallery space, and your work is very appealing to our customer base. We've sold a number of your pieces.
Yes, you have. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank God.
Keep going.
But I want to speak to the. I mean, if you were sitting and trying to talk to Taylor Morris, who's sitting over here,
Yes.
who works here at the gallery space, who is an aspiring artist, and other artists, I mean, what kind of things would you tell them?
I would tell them, Adrian, to stay focused, because that's what I did. I had some wise counsel given to me by my former high school teacher, Leslie Camazon, who's still living, by the way. And I just reconnected with him about maybe 3 or 4 months ago, to his wife, because he's not 80 at Alzheimer's, but he still recognizes who I am. And one thing he told the high school students in 10th grade, he said, young kids, if you want to be good in what you do, he said, keep it on your mind. He said, think art, draw at every opportunity you can get. And he said, every month, do something new. If it's nothing but do a sketch. And I tell you, Adrian, to this day, the words reverberate. When I'm in the studio, like when maybe 2 days go by and I haven't lifted up a brush, I can hear his voice talking to me like, Ron, you must do something in a month. If it's nothing but do it.
It's not that, and I can see them like that piece of it behind me.
Okay. Okay.
Okay.
I want to do that.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
That's okay. And so to this day, those words reverberate in my soul. And so I say, you stay focused, and this is something that you want to do. Discipline yourself. Learn more about your craft as you possibly can. It doesn't have to be a painter necessarily. You could be a sculptor or work in the area of ceramics, or you can be into music field or dance, or you can do theater, or acting, whatever you love to do. Put your all into it. Seek out the best counsel you can get the best instruction you can get. Study that craft, model after that craft, and live that craft and love it, and just discipline yourself to be the best you can be.
Let me ask you this question. I mean, I've been collecting art for quite a long time, and I know, and I've talked to you about this, that sometimes it can be frustrating for an artist to get folks in the area in which they live to buy and appreciate their work. Do you feel that way about Philadelphia and the surrounding area?
Yes, I do, to a degree. It has gotten better in the last maybe 10 years in my career, but I can say prior to the last decade, things are very slow in Philadelphia area and also other cities as well. I have been blessed in my career to be able to show in other places like Syracuse, New York, Virginia, other areas throughout this metropolitan area. And I found out that it's the same everywhere you go. For some reason or another, I know with African Americans, you'd have a hard time perceiving greatness, or is it just that their aspirations are only to enjoy the pleasures of life? What I mean is, I believe that most of the people that are affluent, that have the means to help an emerging artist or struggling artist further his career, I think they would rather choose a nice vacation or a nice Mercedes-Benz or Rolls Royce rather than invest in the arts. So I think our people need to be educated about the value and celebrating our culture more than rap music, more than movie going, but also in the arts. I think we're lacking our education. I think it starts when you're young. I think we can train our young people to appreciate the arts. I think they'll have more of a better appreciation of it, and therefore they would learn to support it.
Well, I know when we was in school, I mean, I didn't take any art courses. that wasn't something that they made you take. Are you suggesting that maybe it needs to be part of the curriculum?
I believe it should be.
Why you say that?
Because it was a benefit to me as a youth coming up, being a child. I had art classes from kindergarten all the way up to 9th and 10th grade. And I thought it was beneficial to us. I don't know whether it was because I went to a public school, they would change now. I don't know whether I went to a public school, or I think it depends on what school and area you live in too. I think it's very helpful to start young people young. Let them know that they can have a greater appreciation when they get old about the blessings and be able to appreciate the value and support black art.
So we said earlier that James was running late.
You walked up here, right, James?
Well, my son. He jammed me, so I had to call my granddaughter.
Don't worry about it, but you here.
Yeah.
How you doing?
How you doing?
I'm doing all right.
Okay.
I was knocking on wood and praying that I feel, up to dinner because
You got your second shot?
no, my first shot, man.
That was your first shot?
Yeah.
Oh.
My wife's still home in the bed.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So you feel all right?
Yeah, I feel a little better now, but I feel a lot to get out of here.
Okay.
I have to get out of here.
Well, Ryan been holding the fort now since you've been gone.
Yeah, your turn.
Now it's your turn. So now it's your turn. Ryan is talking up. So now it's on you. So tell the folks who you are and your upbringing and we call you the senior citizen of the art world
Right.
in Philadelphia.
Yes.
And you've been at this game for what?
Oh, I was at this game for
60 years almost?
I would say going on 54 years. 54 years.
So give us some history.
But past that, art has been everything to me.
Okay, great.
I mean, when I finally fell into really being an artist painting, I look back now and said, what was I doing? What was I doing all the past years without art?
So tell people about your upbringing. You from South? I know
I'm
you're
from
from
South Carolina.
From what part of South Carolina?
Bishopville.
I was down in Charleston. I drove.
Yeah.
It was kind of interesting.
Oh, yeah?
Down the low country.
But I came up here when I was 2 years old.
Oh, so you're
It was
from
a baby.
Yeah, right. I was a baby. But
And you started this thing when?
I started this way when I said.
When you started this painting when?
Oh, I started painting when I was, I say about 7 years old. Back in the day, I say back in the day,
Way back.
we had a street, Monroe Street, 242 Monroe Street. And on that street, I mean, it was boxers, singers, and anybody that was doing anything positive was on that street.
Okay.
And I was 7 years old, and I was the one that always drew.
Okay.
And we would have contests. They would call people, other kids from all over the different neighborhoods, to have contests of who could draw the best. And that was the start. That was my start of, getting involved with art.
And then when you trained, you stayed at Fleischer Memorial.
But then I went to Fleischer in '67.
And then you did a little time at the barns.
At the barns, and but now, the thing was, like, when I was like 23, I was married, and I had 4 sons. So like I would envy people that went to the academy, James Brown, all of those people,
Richard Watson.
right?
Yeah.
I was crazy about them. That was a big deal. I said, oh, y'all went to the academy, but they knew about me. They knew about the reputation I was making back in the early 70s.
So tell us about the reputation you made.
Well, it was back in '69. I met Jerry, Frank Rodriguez. They was like owners of the Painted Bride.
Okay.
And when I met those guys, I mean, everything developed there.
Great.
Because they had heard about me from flashes winning all kinds of different prizes. I would go around. I was proud of everything I did with art. And I would take, like, she won first prize for this, first prize for that. And then they said, well, can we see some of your work? So basically I started taking cabs around there. And Jerry, he was the main guy. He said, well, would you like to join us? So I joined them in 1969. I joined them. They said, well, would you like to have a show? I said, oh yes.
So you had your first show?
I had my first show at the Painted Bride in 1970.
Okay. How many images did you do?
And I had like about 35 paintings.
Wow.
And believe it or not, this gonna sound ludicrous, but I sold 25 paintings on my first show.
Beautiful.
I just wanted to show. I didn't have price tags on my work. and people was coming in.
So out of curiosity, what were you selling pieces for?
Oh, back then was $100. The highest painting back then was like $350.
Okay, you sold 25 of them.
Yeah. Hey, man.
You probably felt like a millionaire.
I was like, Sam, oh, I'm rich.
I think you did.
That was the beginning of it, you know?
But there was a point in time when you took a trip to Paris, right?
Oh yeah, I went to Paris. That was my first show in 70. And then I did another show in 71. So in 72, I told my wife, I said, if I do good on this show, I'm gonna take the advantage of it. I'm going overseas. She said, well, do whatever you want. You want to do it, go ahead and do it.
Nice.
So, sure enough, in 72, I sold like 18 paintings. I came home, I bought a refrigerator for her, and a washer, and they go on, I'm catching the plane.
And you went to Paris?
I went to Paris. I went to Paris for 3 weeks.
Nice.
And what did you do over there when you was over
I
there?
went over to just study art, the Louvre,
Nice.
and the galleries, you know.
Did that influence your work?
Oh, did it? Yeah. And the thing about it, Rudy, like before I went to Paris, I was painting in a way that people were saying, where did you get your influence from? Who you study under? You study under Van Gogh, Monet, and all these people? I had not heard of these people.
Are you serious?
I'm serious. I had not heard of these people. And Jerry, the guy who was the director at the Painted Bride, he would tell me, James, you got to start. That what started me to go to Paris. He said, you got to start learning about all these people people saying that you paint a lot.
Well, see, we're going to at some point walk. If you pan to the left to Mr. Atkins' right, you'll see some of his images. But James, before we talk about those images, I remember when we had our opening show, we were talking about your process. I know that you both are. I know you and Ron are both oil-based painters.
Right.
But your oil paints look a lot different than Ron's oil paints. Now you said something I thought was interesting, where you said you uncapped the tube
Right.
and let it sit for a while.
I've been doing that since I've been painting.
So tell people about that. Why do you do it that way? Was it something you just did or what?
It's something like, you know, it comes from the fact I used to do pastels.
Oh,
pastels.
That's why.
I fell in love with that quiet.
The quiet images.
Right.
And you the type color.
Right. And the colors is the hardest thing you could do.
Yes, it is.
But this what happened to me. I was living in an apartment there, way back in years back in 68, 69. I was living in the project. I had a little apartment there. I was doing watercolors, and I knocked the water, a cup of water over top of the watercolor. I had a fit. But when I looked at it, it was up, the water quiet everything down, made it look like a pastel. And with that, that quietness came back again.
So you're saying you were doing a pastel or you were painting on a canvas?
No, this is a watercolor on watercolor paper.
Oh, watercolor paper.
Watercolor paper.
And you spilled some water and
Right.
it kind of
Yeah.
gave it that muted look.
That gave me an extra. That gave me an extra version of how to do watercolors. So when I would go to school, I would do watercolors, And you know, watercolors dry real fast.
Yeah, they do, right?
And I would do watercolor, and I take water, look around, and wipe, smudge it all over, get all the hardness out of it. And Moody, I won, I don't know how many prizes the watercolors.
Well, just you can sit in your seat and just turn the camera to the works, and because I just want you to describe your inspiration to some of these pieces.
Right.
Now, it's true, these are all oil-based paintings.
Oil paintings, but you see they like chalk, they look like
Yes.
quietness of it.
Correct.
That's from letting the wood, drying out the tubes of oil to a certain point where it looked like a pastel. And then I paint. With all of them, I use this. And it gives you a different quality of light.
Correct.
You know, it's a light, but it's a quiet light.
Right.
It's almost like Ryan has a way of doing things that they sort of like, they moody, you know? They give you a feeling of, he got his own quality about it. And when Ryan told me about having the show with him, I saw his work, I said, oh, this will work. This show will look nice together. Thanks to you, Ryan.
No problem.
But that is what I try to reflect. Since I've been playing, I've been doing it this way. And that's what people was looking at before I even heard of Monet, Manet,
all the French Impressionists.
Right.
The Impressionists.
That's
right.
what it resembles to me. It reminds me that I'm thinking that this guy is a French painter.
Right.
He's from Paris. That's where he's from. He's not from.
He's
not from South Carolina via Philadelphia.
Right.
Moody, I could tell you stories. We wouldn't have enough time.
You can tell us some stories because you got another 30 minutes. So keep talking.
Because
turn so you can see over
right.
there. So when we turn to the wall there.
Right. Okay. Now, when I had my first, well, going back to the first one-man show again. When I had my first one-man show, I remember hanging my paintings, and a couple came in and was looking. I had half of my wall done, and I was hanging things over top like you got here now. And I remember a couple saying, "Oh my God! Finally, we got some French artists coming on South Street." And I said, I looked down on the ladder, and she said, "Who is this? Painter? Who is this Atkins?" I said, "That's me." I said, "It's me." She said, "Oh no, are you kidding?" I said, "Oh no, these are my words." She said, "Oh my," and they went off.
So by the way, were they people of color or what?
White people.
Okay.
White people.
Okay.
And that juggled me like, oh, wow, must be on the right. I'm onto something here. But the bottom line is like, I just love art, you know?
Yes.
And it just stayed with me all these years. I mean,
that's good, that's great. So, now, I want to ask you a few follow-up questions. You've been around a lot.
oh yeah.
For long and around.
Way long.
And I'm sure you have your opinions about the art world and the pros and the cons. So let's talk about the pros and the cons from your perspective. Let's talk about the cons first.
Oh, it's a lot of kinds. But I stay positive.
Good.
You know, it's like when I met Ryan, I don't know, it's an endless thing I have. And somebody like leading you the wrong way, you keep getting up. But if somebody like, I tend to try to stay around people that for real in the art world. If I see that something ain't right or feel it or nothing like that,
Yeah.
I sort of like move away.
I know when I first met you, you told me that you tended to stay away from doing shows. Is that a fair statement? Was that misinterpretation?
Oh yeah, well,
You get your own shows as
Right.
opposed to
Right.
doing shows with galleries.
Right.
Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, that was the first. That I figured in my mind. I said, well, for me, I could better off do like my show. Matter of fact, back in 70, I guess it was 78, I joined the Third Street Gallery. The reason I joined the Third Street Gallery, they had a lot of space. You know, you could do, you know, you was allowed to do a show every year. And I was looking for a spot like that so I could start doing my one-man shows.
Okay.
So with that, my first one-man show was about the Civil War in 1986.
Mm.
And that was a huge hit. Then after that, I did I did 5 shows there. After that, I did a nude show.
The nude?
Nude,
Nude, N-U-D-E?
Right.
Okay.
A nude show.
That's what you paid me.
Yeah, there's a little one over there, down the back.
Okay.
Nude and movements.
We see that we cut off.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. I see you getting news on it.
Then, American, I called it Land Before. That was American Indian show. All of these shows I'm telling you now consists of like 45 paintings.
Wow.
But that's you know, I had in mind like, if I'm gonna show, I'm gonna, you know, let me show.
Were you ever represented by a gallery?
Represented by a guy? Oh yeah, back then I was, it used to be a couple of galleries on Chestnut Street. Adolph Gallery, I don't know if you heard of that. Right now, you heard of David and David Gallery? Right across from the Art Lounge?
I don't know, where's the other line at? That's down.
That's on right down Square.
Square.
Yeah.
But you at some point, like Ron, you had your works exhibited down at Sandy Webster's gallery at some point, right?
Oh yeah,
In
right,
group shows,
right.
Yeah, so Sandy seemed to have been able to coalesce
Yeah.
around the black
But
artists.
I was a little, cause you know, I was a little worried, you know, on that. I couldn't, certain things. She wanted to be like, well, if you want to show here, you're gonna have to be, you know, fill out papers saying that you can't show nowhere else.
Exclusive.
I said, no.
So you weren't going to be tied down
With Spread Williams.
Right.
Yeah.
I said, no. I said, you know, and Brantley and a lot of people, my friends, they were, well, James, you know, she'll sell your work. And which was true.
Cause I
I sold, oh my
Cause
God.
I got some work from her years before we even. I never met you. At least I don't think I did. And I had work from her many years ago. And when we opened up this space here back in 2016, you know, you were one of the artists I wanted to get. And I remember telling Ron, I said, you know, I got 5 James Atkins. I got, you know, and I said, I asked Sandy Webster, and I kind of got the impression nobody was trying to tell me where you were because they were trying, I'm like, wait a minute, they were trying to keep him as a guarded secret. And then one day, this white gentleman came in here, you know him because he said, you know James Atkins? And I can't remember this guy's name, but he.
Oh, I know you're talking about.
He was the one that gave me your phone number.
Right.
And I said, thank you, Jesus.
Yeah.
Because I said to myself, I wanted, because the work that I have is different from these works in the sense that there's a piece hanging in the bathroom back in the back, and I'm not saying it's hanging in the bathroom for any particular reason, but it's in there because of space.
Right.
Of the guy standing on the corner smoking cigarettes. Remember that, James?
Oh yeah, the earth colors.
Yeah.
That movement. Yeah.
So, we talked about the cons. What about the pros?
Pros, in respect of like,
The pros of what you believe the art world represents for a black artist like yourself.
it's gonna never be on the level that
You believe it should be?
that it should be.
Why do you say that?
Because, I think it was about 10 years ago, not that long ago, we had a show at the museum. And this show was supposed to have been the biggest show ever at the museum. 200 years of black art. It was so terrible, oh my God.
You mean the Philadelphia Museum of Art?
Philadelphia Museum of Art. It was so terrible. People, they trashed it. They said it's the worst demonstration of black art ever.
Well, who
I
curated that show?
I forget who did. But it was.
Was any of your works?
No.
I remember they had this show.
No.
Was any works of any of the artists from Philadelphia, like James Brantley?
I don't know. It wasn't. All the top artists that you had there wasn't none of us in it. Art was terrible.
You know, it's shameful because I tell people, you know, that there's a wealth of artists of your generation and from Philadelphia that I don't think have been truly recognized in the art world.
Exactly.
And you know the Andrew Turners, the Brown Washington, James Atkins, Brantley, he's being recognized. Bo Booker's being recognized.
Yeah.
But there's a whole bunch of other folks
Being overlooked.
that's being overlooked.
Right.
So how do we? Do you have an opinion as to how we change that?
Like my grandfather used to say, sooner or later, if your hand right on the wall, it's gonna come out.
Now, it's interesting you say that because I was speaking with, you both may know her. Remember Pam Brown? That used to
Yeah, I remember her.
Used to own Art Jazz.
Yeah, Art Jazz.
Yeah, I remember her.
Art Jazz is they no longer they don't have a storefront anymore. But Pam now is an art appraiser, and she's doing quite well, and she's pretty efficient in doing that. So we were having a discussion the other day, and you know she's always telling me, Adrian, this is what's going on in the market, particularly when it comes to black art and art for people of color. And she said to me that she was at a recent showing, or it probably online at Sotheby's, and black art is being bought up by Caucasians, and they're paying more than what she would think.
Okay.
But to me, and she said the images that they're gravitating towards are protest pieces. Ron, you had protest pieces that we sold,
Right.
and pieces that have strong images of black men. So, you got any thoughts on that? You know, the climate is such. People look at climate.
Yeah.
Look at what's going on in the world, and sometimes you benefit from things that are going on in the world. And I'm just asking that question because there's a lot of artists out there now that are painting pieces that represent the current environment. Have you ever thought to paint that way?
Well, I had done that one painting,
But
No Justice, No Peace, because you had the show and you gave me the thought. I said, okay, I'm gonna do a piece because I felt strongly about the situation of all our black brothers being killed, by white cops. Because I felt I had a strong premonition to do that piece, and like David said, it so quickly. But I do have a premonition to do other pieces, protest pieces, but I have to be motivated before I do it. I just don't do it because it's in the news. It has to touch me first.
what about you, Jay?
Like, when I start painting, I look at painting as being free. This is my freedom. And like, when I saw winning all these prizes, I remember asking the teacher, I said, now, I don't want a prize for watercolor, pastel, painting, advanced painting. Where do I go from there? And the real nice teacher, Sam Martin, never forget his name.
Yeah, I know.
He said,
I'm
James, the way you paint, he said, you paint, whatever you want to paint, you just paint. You got the world to paint, And I said, and with that, I took in consideration of like National Geographic.
Yes.
I told you about that.
Yeah.
Right? I used to collect them back in the day with 25 cents on Salad Bookstore.
Yes.
I used to collect them, and going through them, that started expanding my mind, showing me different places. And I said, oh yeah, I can understand it now. Let me paint all of these things that show people that don't necessarily see all these things. If I could put it on canvas, I could compare it to them, and they would say, oh, yeah.
So Ryan said that what inspires him, what he said was people. And people is people is important place in his pieces. So do you have inspiration of any that you can tell us about that before you start painting, that you have to be inspired before you start putting your craft to work?
Oh no, people, I do, well, you could see, a lot of my canvases have people in them. But it goes back to like, see, I had an uncle who used to draw. You know, draw two faces and stuff like that. Portraits, and that motivated me to start drawing people. But in general, like, as people, if you go to draw people, there's people to be seen, there's people, it's all over. You know, all over this planet. And, you know, I try to stop.
So in other words, what you're telling us is that you don't really operate, your mind don't operate the way some artists operate. In other words, you just start,
Right.
You can't define specifically what it is, why you created this image here. This
Right.
image of, this image
Oh,
here.
yeah, now this image here, that's from 1940s, y'all.
1940.
In fact, this is the 40s. And this was a piece from, I did a show, 19.
Wow.
Everything was in the 40s, and this is one of them.
Oh.
So in other words, what you're saying is that you went to a show and you just decided to recreate it. Is that what you're telling
Oh, no, you know, like, in my mind, I think of what I'm gonna do next.
I got you.
And I'm thinking, I said, now, what about the 40s? I did things of the 20s.
Oh, okay. So you're period.
I do, yeah.
So are you calling yourself a period
Yeah.
painter?
I did a show about romantic Russia. 84. You remember the show Visions? Remember the show Visions?
Burning on.
Burning on.
Yeah, I remember that. It's almost
Yeah. Yeah. Well, at the end of all his shows, he would give you a little presentation of artwork.
Yeah, you would. I remember that.
And he came to one of my shows. He said, "Oh my God!" He said, "I've been hearing about you, man." He said, "What popped you into a show about Russia?" I said, "Well, I was." Well, one of my teachers said, "If you didn't understand, you just paint."
That's a good.
That's what I've been doing you know, since I've been doing all these big one-man shows.
Okay.
Just like this show right here, I've been promoting. This the show right here.
I like that.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
But this is like 72 pieces. And what you see in here, these 20 pieces in here, is taken from this, what I was looking with this.
I've been to your studio.
Yeah.
You got a lot of stuff in there.
Yeah.
A lot of stuff.
Yeah.
So tell me, one of Ron's comments was, we asked a comment about what would you tell these I call them these emerging artists. And we got young ones in the tail.
Yeah. She's a dope.
If you had an audience of artists that you were lecturing to, what would you tell them?
Oh, you know that old band in the dream, there's a heart, in the heart is a dream.
Yeah.
Band that we all on. Don't never give up that. I mean, when I wake up in the morning, put my feet on the floor, I'm looking at art. You know, that inspired me. And see, what are you, 20?
I'm 23.
Oh, 23? Well,
A baby.
you like art. It might get away from you, you know, but.
Had it ever gotten away from you? Let me ask you the same question. Has it ever gotten away from you?
No.
At some point, do you ever get frustrated and say to myself, you know what? I ain't making the kind of money I'm making.
Not with me.
Not with me.
I don't think with
Put it
him.
up in the issue.
No. Because another thing is like you said you were working on your job. I worked on my job for 49 years. For 49 years at a warehouse.
Okay.
Driving forklift clams, clam lift,
Right.
pool pushers, loading boxcars, all of that. And 49 years, I would do that. And at night, all my paintings, that's another thing, that's why it's quiet, made it quiet. I only paint at night.
When you sleep?
Huh?
When you sleep?
Well,
I need 8 hours, man.
I play about at least 3 hours a night.
That's it?
That's all?
Yeah.
Wow.
On the weekends now, I go to work.
Okay,
On
okay.
the weekends, I go to work.
So you pay 3 hours a night as opposed to sleeping 3 hours a night?
Right.
Okay, okay.
And then, but another thing, if I'm getting ready for a show, I will work on 3 paintings at a time.
Okay.
I never have work on one painting, but by itself. Always 3 paintings at a time.
That's been your,
That was, yeah,
for years.
for years.
It's different with me, because I always worked on one at a time, because I was involved in the church. I was in church 3 days a week. I was working 44 hours a week. I had 2 children to take care of. And so all I could do one at a time. And I was happy to get one done a month. But it wasn't until later my kids got older, I was able to expand, work on maybe like more than one piece at a time. But back to your question you asked me, in regards to not being, like, running to an artist block. That situation I ran into when I tore my knee. In 2016, I was going to work one day and fell on the ice. And I tore my quads. So I was in Chesterfield Hospital for 2 days.
Wow.
And when I came home out the hospital, I had a healthcare provider to come over and give me therapy. And I couldn't do no artwork for about maybe 4 or 5 weeks. It killed me.
You couldn't do your artwork. You
I couldn't get in the basement where my garage was, because I couldn't walk.
Oh.
You know, and it killed me. You know, and it was like you said, it's not about money, but it's about that impetus to be able to create.
Right.
And even now, when I finish a piece, I'm gonna take a break maybe a week. After that, I have to get down there and do some work.
Do you both feel that you have been recognized as great artists from Philadelphia?
Yeah, I would say, because I don't know how many times I've been written up about. You know, but it could be far more than that, what it is.
You feel the same way, Ron?
No, I feel like the struggle is still continuing for me. I mean, although I want accolades, I want all kind of awards, I want money and all of these things, I feel as though I haven't reached the pinnacle of where I should be at this stage of my life, being 63 years old. I'm a little disappointed, to tell you the truth, in terms of that area. But that doesn't stop me from being able to create.
Right.
What I'm doing now, James, I'm creating a legacy. Because when I die and leave here, my grandchildren, my great-grandchildren, will be able to look back and reflect my grandfather. He was a great painter. That's when I'll be recognized. I believe that God wants me to have my fruits that I should have now. I don't know whether it'll make me think more prideful of myself or whatever it is. I believe God got me humble in this way. I believe my stuff is going to come later when I pass.
Let me ask you both this question. Do you think that if your art was hanging in the major museums in Philadelphia, I mean, do you think that would show that you really have been recognized as an artist of note?
I used to think on terms like that, you know. But 1973, we had a show, Painted Bride, at the museum. And,
At the Philadelphia Museum?
Philadelphia Museum of Art, in 73. And
But would you want your art to be in their permanent collection?
Sure.
I used to think, yeah. But on the other hand, it's like the art museum, it's a building. You know, I mean, it got prestige and all that.
Right.
But that's not going to kick me on the side and say, oh, well, I didn't get in this, so I guess I'm out with pulling it up.
So on the flip side, you would want your art in the hands of collectors.
Right.
And that's the best. That would be your feeling of greatness if you had more collectors collecting.
Believe me, sooner or later, like he said, it's gonna get out there, and years from now, a lot of these paintings are still gonna be here.
Yeah,
We all gonna be gone.
Definitely.
But I predict that every painting in here, Ryan painting, Ron painting, other artists painting, they might not be able to see the fruit of what they've been doing.
Right.
But they, like you said, your great grand.
Right, my family.
That's what you concentrate on doing.
Right.
So it's all about legacy.
Right.
Definitely, it's also about.
That's a good way.
That's
to
what's
look at
Right. And you see through history, like, wow, and it's gonna look so pitiful that they didn't. Well, I don't understand. They didn't recognize these people. Look how this was.
Well, look at Van Gogh. He was sold 2 paintings in his lifetime.
Right.
Look at him now. Paid himself for millions.
Right.
But he can't enjoy the fruits of it.
Right.
Somebody's getting it, but it ain't Van Gogh.
Right.
The same thing will be like you and I.
Right.
When we go, my children, my grandchildren, they're going to reap the labor, the fruits of my labor. But it's okay.
And see, that's why I came up with this wonderful title for this show called Generations.
Oh yeah.
Nothing to you, man.
It was a method to my madness, because it's all about extending this work beyond
Right.
our presence.
Right.
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 It is good that you both think that way.
Right. Definitely.
But you know, the business side of me is such that, you know, I would like more of your works to be purchased while you're living.
Oh.
You know,
We would too.
I know you do. Everybody benefits from it.
Well, that's all amazing.
So the question is, you know, and I was kind of struggling with this question. You know, how do we do that? I mean, you know, what's the, you know, do we have to continually reach out to these major media folks about your works? I know, you know, I know from reading that art from artists of color is what people are looking at today. You know, when you look at Ron's work, you can immediately say, well, that ain't no Caucasian painting that. When you look at your work, you can say, well, ain't no black person painting that. Which is interesting.
Yeah, right.
It's very interesting how there's such a contrast.
Right.
And it just shows the world how skillful artists are. And you know, it's just my goal to get people to come into this gallery space and buy your works. And I feel obligated. And I just respect you guys because, you know, I've been followers and buyers of your work going back since the 90s, early 90s, and have graced the space with your works. So, you know, we got another 10 minutes. So I need you guys, whatever you want to talk about, want to ask me some questions or to tell the audience what you think about the art world, and the floor is yours.
Say something?
I just think that the art world in general are losing something by not making us inclusive in the mainstream institutions and mainstream museums. I think the young people are looking up to us to be examples of role models in terms of where art is going to lead or where art is going at. And by them not including us, we have a handful: Jacob Lawrence, Elizabeth Catlett, and Romare Bearden in the field. A handful, but then there are thousands, like Adrian alluded to. The talented, or more so than Jacob Lawrence and Romare Bearden, they should get an opportunity to be in mainstream. But my point is that whether we do or not, it's still not going to stigmatize us as artists. I mean, we were born to be artists. This is my purpose of being here. Not only to be a preacher of the gospel, but also to create while I'm here. And I just thank God for giving me the opportunity to be able to still paint, and still love not just my work, but all the artists' work as well. And I would thank God for the opportunity to be able to show my work down through the years, be successful. You know, I make some good money when I cruise with sales of my work, and my daughter through college who sells my work. And I'm appreciative of all of those little things that come along with being an artist. But yet it's still, like you said, in terms of getting the full proper evaluation of your skills and your talent, your abilities, and the hard labor you put in, sometimes you feel as though you're being robbed of it. But even in the midst of that, you know, you still have the wherewithal to be able to create in spite of. And I think this is what makes us strive. Because art is like a personal endeavor that we try to reach. We want to paint a masterpiece, but every time we fall short of painting a masterpiece, this is why we keep going. There's a drive in us, me personally.
Right.
That's what I want to do. I've never reached a masterpiece yet. That's why I keep going after it. Piece after piece. My next piece is going to be better. My next piece is going to be better. And all those nice pieces, I know I can do better. And we continually strive to reach that goal. And to me, the adventure of it, or the journey of it, is to me most rewarding. That's back to the pros. That's the pros. I mean, it's just like painting a baby. It's like making love with the brush and the canvas.
And the longer you take, the more advanced you're going to get.
Yes, yes, yes.
The longer it takes, you're going to,
Yes.
Every year you get better,
Better and better.
better and better. There's going to be no end to that.
Yeah,
You know?
definitely.
And then with me, it's like, I could do art, like, I've been having so many problems in family for the last 3 years. My sister, my brother, my wife, for all people that passed away.
Right.
But art,
That's a savior.
sorrowful as I get, I go to my studio,
It's therapeutic.
I put my music on, I lock the door, bang,
Me too.
you know. But I think, once I start painting, I'm thinking of all the people that passed.
Right.
You know, all the
Right.
people that,
Right.
I'm saying like, oh my God, I wish so and so was here to see what I'm doing now.
Right.
You know, and the people that passed away, and that knew me when I was, you know,
Right.
doing good things. If they could see me now,
Right. Right.
it's a blessing.
It is a blessing.
It's a true blessing to have art in your life.
It is. I mean, I have to
Right.
second that. It is a blessing. It gives
It
you,
is.
it gives you some inner peace.
It does. It's therapeutic.
It's very therapeutic. At least it's
Yeah.
therapeutic for me. You know,
Me too.
it's therapeutic sitting here and listening to you two old timers talk about your brand.
Especially I'll be 80, and it's still a strange. I'll be 80 in November.
Praise the Lord.
Yeah, 80 in November.
That's a blessing.
But here's the turning point. I'm 80, I'll be 80,
That's a blessing.
but deep down inside me, I'm still this 7-year-old kid.
Yes.
I'm still this 7-year-old kid that's burning, you know, to draw. I
Right.
still see myself as this kid. You know,
That's beautiful.
and when art, you know, you can't be afraid to
No,
do
you
it.
can't. No.
Because it'll come up. It definitely show up when you can.
Oh yeah.
But I never had that. That's why they say the little kids, when you see them draw, you know, they have no feeling of like, oh, I'm going to mess this up. You know,
They
don't
just go for
have
broke.
that. So
Right.
with that, I keep that in myself. I'm still being a
Beautiful.
little kid, 7 years old. That, you know, like my grandfather used to tell me, say, well, you're always drawing and this and that. He said, now, what would you rather have? A pocket full of money or a pocket full of oil painting? And I thought about it.
Both.
I said, no. I think I'll have a pocket full of oil painting. Because I could all, he said, there you go. That's something you could always do. And eventually, you're going to make money out of doing that.
Definitely.
That's a good.
But if you just take that money and that's it,
Right.
you lose all of that.
Yes, you will.
You
You
know?
lose your creativity.
Right,
that's right.
Doesn't allow for creativity.
Right.
That goes back to staying focused. What I was telling the young people, young aspiring artists, stay focused.
Yeah.
I've been focused for years.
Yeah.
Had a lot of adversity, a lot of distractions, but still the easel and the canvas.
Yeah.
That's where I go.
Yeah.
It's beautiful, man.
Well, gentlemen, I must say I've appreciated this chat, this art chat, and if for those who are on this live feed, if you wanted to come here and see these wonderful pieces, all you gotta do is come to the Moody Jones Gallery. We're up here at Glenside on Eastern Road. We're open Tuesdays through Saturdays from 12 to 5, and on Sundays and Mondays you can call us and you're serious about buying something. We'll make it our business over here and open the space for you. So, James, Ron, we appreciate you.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming
Thank you.
and sharing your past and your present and your future with us.
And this was a blessing for me. Like, it's been years since I walked in the movie and saw you on this show. It's like, oh God, Ron. I would walk the street every day telling people about the place.
Okay. Beautiful.
Yeah.
Spread the word.
I hit the bricks all the time.
Spread the word.
Spread the word.
And I've been to a lot of shows, a lot of galleries, all overseas, but this place, it's got a feeling to it. It's like the Painted Bride back in the day when we first started. We would, sit around
Yeah.
and talk about art and all that. It's the same feeling.
I say ambiance. Yeah. That's beautiful.
I take my pride in doing this.
Right.
This is my therapy when I hang to work.
Right.
And I'm glad you guys appreciate
a beautiful
how
job.
I'm doing it. Okay, thank you much.